So deciding what franchise is right for you can be challenging for any franchise prospect. There's a sea of franchise brands that exist, and when you're looking for the right one to fit your business portfolio, it's challenging to get there. But obviously, once you've decided that you want to do pizza, or you want to do burgers, or you want to do service, or you want to do retail, after that comes the point of doing homework. So Sean, when you're looking at an FDD, it can be overwhelming for a franchise prospect. Explain what is the purpose of an FDD, and what as a prospect, or how as a prospect can I not feel overwhelmed when I get this giant document?
Yeah, the funny thing about the FDD is that it's actually designed for the franchisee. It was actually designed to help them do their due diligence. But I think with the sheer scope of it and the size of it, it's intimidating for many franchise candidates. When they look at it, they think this is what the franchisor wanted to give me, but in reality it is for their protection. Some of the things to look at, obviously, in an FDD that I recommend people to look at when they're doing their due diligence is the most important thing is probably the item 7, which is initial investment, and the range of the initial investment of that franchise. Now, the one thing to take into consideration is that the item 7 only goes up to the first 3 months of working capital. So the question that you really need to ask is, what is the typical break even for this franchise system? Because the initial investment may be, you know, 100, 150,000, but if the break even goes beyond the first 3 months, then your investment level is going to be much higher. So that's one of the things that I always tell people is, again, you have a list of the franchisees that are in there. Try to find out what the typical break-even point is. Some brands will have that time frame in their item 19s, which is a great resource, but it'll help you determine what your true costs are. Because if you talk to a lot of franchisors and franchisees, the people who've had trouble is they didn't have the capital that they needed to sustain getting to profitability. And the item 19, or the item in item 7 in the FDD is the initial investment, but that's only to start the business in the first 3 months. So keep that in consideration.
What percentage of franchisors will reject a franchisee who is right on the cusp of having enough money to purchase a franchise?
How many will reject them?
Yeah, what percentage?
Not very many.
Yeah. So I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that you're going to have as a prospect, that if it costs $100,000 to buy that franchise, and because item 7 only projects out 3 months, you might really need $200,000 to give you the best shot at success, but franchisor is going to say, we'll let you in. So from a franchise prospect standpoint, how important is it for them to almost pull back their emotional interest in a brand to make sure that they're financially sound when it comes to investing in a brand?
It's really, like what I say to people is you know, try to pull the emotion out of it. I mean, it is an emotional decision, but be realistic, and like, it comes back to finding out exactly the capital that you're going to need to carry you through that initial period. You know, having enough to get started, and I see that mistake happen a lot, where people just, how much do I need to get going, could be a critical mistake. And so just ensure that you understand exactly what that total investment is, and then if possible even have another additional working capital for the rainy day periods in case you run into those as well. So I've seen it in many brands that if you can sustain that first period of the break even and getting to profitability, the likelihood of success just dramatically increases. So most franchisees fail within that first, say, year or whatever that break even point is. Understand what that is, understand that the capital required for that, and then plan to ensure that if it gets off to a rocky start, you have a backup plan.
How important is it to have an attorney in this process, and should an attorney help you determine whether or not you have enough capital to become a franchisee?
That's a great question. My recommendation is, if you're going to obviously have someone look at an FDD, an attorney, but more importantly, make sure it's a franchise attorney. The problem is, if you have an estate attorney or you have a friend that's an attorney, they're going to look at it. They may not be familiar with franchising, and the franchise agreement and the FDD is heavily weighted to the franchisor. That's just the nature of franchising. So if you're going to go out and have someone who's not familiar with franchising, they're going to go and try to negotiate terms in the franchise agreement, which the franchisor is not going to do. Then you're just going to waste a lot of money to find out that those things aren't going to change and the deal is what the deal is. So what I recommend to people is that have a franchise attorney review it, but most importantly, just make sure that the agreement is pretty much boilerplate. Is there anything in the franchise agreement that is different or unique to franchising to be aware of? But more importantly, understand what your commitment level is and what you're willing to put up with financially in the terms of the franchise agreement that you have to live by. And I wouldn't necessarily rely solely on an attorney from the investment standpoint. If you're not comfortable in the financial aspect of it, then an accountant or CPA should be able to help you there.
Great. So obviously you as a franchise prospect, you're watching this video for a reason. Be sure to use the search feature at the top, and if you search tips for buying a franchise, it should provide you a little bit more insight into what you need to do. Thanks.